everyone, welcome back to what is a very overdue part 2 of BookTube Spin Tag number 7. Yes, very late coming back to Star Trek Deep Space Nine's The 34th Rule, book number 23 in the, I guess what you could call the canon book series. I had initially made a recording for this review a while back, but looking back at the footage, I just wasn't happy with what I had done, and basically what I was trying to say wasn't exactly what I was trying to say. So, redo. Here we go. So once again, this is The 34th Rule, a novel by Armin Shimerman and David R. George III, from a story by Armin Shimerman and David R. George III, and Eric A. Stillwell. Just a brief bit of research that I did on the novel. Part of the story was inspired by George Takei's experience during Japanese internment during World War II. And the overall story itself was pitched as an episode idea for the show. Obviously it wasn't picked up for that. It was, however, given the okay for novelization, which is not really surprising. Both of those, it feels like a multi-part episode arc, with more description and inner dialogue and less interpersonal dialogue, which was interesting. The title, The 34th Rule, comes from the Ferengi rules of acquisition, number 34 being war is good for business. So that'll give you an idea of what this story sort of involves. The story itself is a bit complicated and a little dense, not in that it's dumb, but that it's very compact. So I'm going to try to keep this as brief as I possibly can. If you are not familiar with Deep Space Nine at all, or Star Trek, I am very sorry. The Grand Nagus Sec, the leader of the Ferengi, is in possession of one of the missing orbs of the prophets. Now these orbs are of great spiritual value to the Bajoran people, especially now in the timeline, since they are still basically kind of in recovery from Cardassian occupation. So, they want it back, and they appeal to Grand Nagus Sec to do the right thing and give it back, but they are willing to pay for it in order to get it back. But Sec has other ideas and decides to create a bidding war and basically sell the orb to the highest bidder. Eventually, in this bidding war, the Bajoran government gets bumped out. Of course, they make more appeals, and that's where Quark comes in. Major Kira, who is the, Bajoran liaison, she's the Bajoran representative on Deep Space Nine, goes to Quark and appeals to him to use his connections with Grand Nagus Sec to influence him to let the Bajorans back in to the bidding war, or to just let them buy it back. And Quark basically says, I could, but what makes you think that he'll listen to me? Long story short, the Bajorans basically say, this means war. Any Ferengi left in our space at the end of this period of time will be arrested. This effectively cuts off the Ferengi from the wormhole and the Gamma Quadrant and any business that they have in the Gamma Quadrant. So, once this happens, Quark appeals to Captain Sisko, because he and his brother Rom don't want to leave. Their business is on Deep Space Nine. Quark has business in the Gamma Quadrant, so he appeals to Captain Sisko for asylum, which gets denied because Starfleet is not allowed to get involved in this particular situation. So, Quark and Rom hide in a sequence that is interesting, but could probably have been cut completely, as there are other Ferengi sort of waiting to the last minute to leave the station and Bajoran space. And Rom and Quark and this handful of other Ferengi get captured and shipped down to a prison camp and are basically forgotten about for a good portion of the novel. Or rather, it's more completely forgotten by the majority of the Bajoran government and the crew of Deep Space Nine. Constable Odo being one of the few who does think about Quark from time to time, because he's been trying for a long time to get Quark in jail. He doesn't like the way this is being handled. And later on, after a lot has already happened, Captain Sisko realizes we do really kind of need Quark here to fix this. Sisko also has an interesting moment with his son Jake, who brings up his father's prejudice towards Ferengi, a prejudice that extends to the most of Starfleet and most other races that are a part of the Star Trek universe. And it's completely in character for Jake to do this, since his best friend is Rom's son Nog, who is mysteriously missing and not mentioned at all in this novel. I can't remember if he's in Starfleet Academy at this point, but it is a little interesting that that little detail is not mentioned. So anyway, Sisko has a bit of reflection on that conversation, plus his own difficult position as Starfleet's representative on Deep Space Nine, as well as being the Bajoran emissary of the Prophets. So he wants to do what he can for Bajor, but his hands are tied in terms of doing what Starfleet wants him to do. Meanwhile, Quark, Rom, and the other Ferengi are enduring some very harsh conditions that seem a little bit out of place for this story, but makes for some good, tense, and seriously dangerous moments for our two favorite Ferengi. So this prison camp used to be a Cardassian prison camp on Bajor, so it's definitely not great, and the person who is in charge of this prison camp now is not in their right mind. So the prisoners are basically sharing one large room. They're exercising in harsh, cold conditions. There's no heating. Their clothing is falling apart. Their footwear is falling apart. At one point, Rom loses the hearing in his ears. And Ferengi, their ears are huge, very sensitive. But there's one sympathetic guard who does get some medication to them when they do get hurt. And like I said, the prison is run by a man who is actually a former inmate of this prison. So he knows sort of all the ins and outs. And he's also, like I said, not in his right mind. He tortures the Ferengi prisoners. He nearly kills Quark at one point, and does end up killing all but one of the Bajoran guards before ultimately disappearing out into the cold, frigid winter of Bajor. Honestly, everything going on with Quark is more interesting than what's happening outside of Bajor and outside Deep Space Nine between the Bajorans and the Ferengi. It's kind of fascinating and a little annoying because there is so little with Quark to begin with, and I feel like the main author forgot about them. Another long story short, Quark and the prisoners escape on a small spacecraft conveniently belonging to one of the Ferengi prisoners, whom Rom realizes isn't what he appears to be. What's also kind of fascinating in this novel is a sort of mice and men parallel drawn between Quark and Rom and Lenny and, drawing a blank on his name now, Lenny and George. But Rom is definitely much more brighter than Lenny. A little slow, but definitely has great enough intelligence to end up working as an engineer on the station at one point. So they're all rescued by Captain Sisko on the Defiant, because at this point Starfleet is pulling everybody out, as war is imminent. And Quark, back where he belongs, is granted asylum, finally, in exchange for talking to the Nagus and basically ending all the conflict, which he does by invoking the 35th rule of acquisition. Peace is good for business. Although, there's also another one. Rule number 76 is also one that could be effective. Every once in a while, declare peace. It confuses the hell out of your enemies. So obviously, things end for the better. Everything goes back to normal in Deep Space Nine, and Quark even reveals to Captain Sisko what the Nagus revealed to him about all of the profit that he made on this weird venture of his. And also the fringe benefits to not only the Bajoran people and government, but also to Quark himself in a weird roundabout punchline of a way. With, of course, Quark's psychological health being the small price paid. Overall, this novel is what it is. It is a standalone extended Star Trek story. It's a bit clunky, and the pace is a bit clunky as well. Some of the characterizations felt a little bit off to me, but all the bonus story points go to the Ferengi, which there are not enough moments there. At least not as much as I thought there would be. It's easy to forget just how dangerous and cunning the Ferengi can be sometimes, considering most of the storylines geared around Ferengi are of the humorous kind, and this novel highlights that very well. So years ago, Armin Shimerman signed my little copy here at a Star Trek convention that no longer exists. Enjoy the read, it said. I don't know if you could see that. And I did enjoy it for what it is. Of course, all my favorite parts were with Quark, and it was fascinating seeing him in a more vulnerable position, which is also kind of a testament to not only the writers, but also Armin Shimerman's portrayal of Quark, because I could hear his voice in there. He was one of the few characters I could hear his voice when reading it. Everyone else was just that little bit off. But Quark was very strong in this. I wish there were more. Is this a novel for everyone? No, this is not. I'd suggest at least a familiarity with Star Trek Deep Space Nine, at the very least, is a must. If you're a casual Star Trek watcher, watch some Deep Space Nine to see if you like it. I actually suggested it to a colleague at work once who we were talking about Arab actors and TV series. Deep Space Nine has one, Alexander Siddig, and I mentioned that, and he checked it out and he thought it was weird. We try. But if you enjoy Star Trek Deep Space Nine, especially like Ferengi stories, I think you'll get some value out of this novel. That's all I have for this long overdue book review for Spin Tag number 7, The 34th Rule from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, yes, I'm going to say it, hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. And in the comments, let me know down there, who's your favorite Star Trek character? There are no wrong answers. Thanks for watching again. Take care. Bye.